Showtime. Okay, it says we are live. So I'm waiting for the thumbs up, but I know this is got a few minutes of delay, a few moments of delay.
Yep.
So I'm waiting for the thumbs up, but I know this has got a few minutes of delay. All right. Okay, great. So here we are, back for storytelling round 2. My name's Caylin, and I'm here with Chris and Danny once again. And we had such a wonderful time doing the storytelling live stream last week. And we decided, let's do it all over again. And we'll do a round 2, and we'll share new stories this time. A couple that actually Danny and I completely made up new stories for this. So this is like the live first telling of these stories, first time people are going to hear. Which is really exciting. And then Chris has a lovely story for us as well. So before we get started, Chris offered to do a little bit of an introduction and gratitude, and just to get us going for the morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris if you're ready.
Yeah, I am actually. And yeah, just wanted to say thanks to Natalie and Steph for saying hi on the comments as well. And yeah, I just wanted to have a moment to connect into the rest of the world, really, partly by saying hello to those people who are watching, and also to just bring our minds together, really, by thinking of what makes this world and that we're part of. So I'd like to send our minds sort of down below to the rocks underneath our feet, under the houses that we're in, or under the land that we're standing on. And to just think of those rocks that support everything, and then from those rocks there comes the soil that the plants grow in, and those plants soaking up the sunlight, and the insects that feed on them, the insects that feed the birds that flying around. They also lift up our hearts and our minds with their songs. The sky too, that's above our heads, holds the clouds and the weather. The wind that blows from all 4 directions, and the water that sort of flows in amongst everything and that unites us all. As our mind sort of thinks of all of those things, it reminds us that all of us who live on this earth are one. And for that, I'm really grateful for the great mystery of all of life. And hopefully with that, we can come back again to here we are in this computer, or these computers, wherever they are, connected to Wi-Fi and internet, which, with gratitude, it's a modern thing, but it's very connective, and I'm very grateful for the ability to be here and share a story with everybody, and to work with these 2 lovely people as well. Over to you, Caylin, and then I think I'm Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. A really nice way to start to kind of get ourselves settled in and remember all the things that we have around us, especially in these times. So just to give a little introduction, we're going to do a similar format to how we did last week, where we'll each tell a story. Danny will go first this time, and then it'll be Chris, and then I'll finish. And after each story, we'll take a moment just to come back together and have a little discussion about our thoughts on the story, and maybe some ideas for how we can connect that into our lives, our day-to-day lives now. So Chris or Danny, do you have anything to add before we get going?
No, I'm ready to go.
All right, so over to you, Danny.
Yeah, good luck.
Hey, everyone, thanks for joining us again. Thanks, Caylin, and thanks, Chris, as well, for your gratitude. As I was putting this story together this week, there were a number of things that I was really grateful for, and one was the inspiration for creativity that we get from nature, from all around us, from the earth and from the ice. I've been working with ice a little bit this week, but also from other storytellers as well. So I'm going to tell you a story, and this is a story from a time when the whole of the UK was covered with a thick, thick forest. And in the forest lived a witch. Now, this witch had jet black hair. She had pale white skin, and she wore a long black cloak. And this witch, she was in charge of the darkness in the forest. And every evening she would dance through the forest, turning every little piece of light dark. And also in the forest lived a dragon. And this dragon had golden scales. It had big, orange, fiery eyes, and it went by the name of Solas. And this dragon was responsible for the light. And every morning it would wake and it would fly through the forest and it would break the darkness and chase the darkness away and bring back the light. And all of the forest creatures agreed with the witch and with the dragon that the right amount of daytime and the right amount of nighttime was very, very important. Throughout the whole year, they agreed that both night and day would get the same amount of time. But the witch was not happy with this. The witch wanted more power deep down. She had a great desire for darkness to cover the whole of the forest. She dreamt that one day she would be able to get rid of Solas and have the forest to herself. But Solas was such a big and great dragon that she would need something extra special to help her. And the witch thought and thought and thought about how she could hatch this plan. And then one night she had an idea. And she painted the forest with darkness and she set off in search of some things. She found the skull of a rat, 3 snake skins, 5 thorns from the bramble bush, and 2 granite rocks. And with the granite rocks, she bashed all of the other things together until she made a powder. And then she got some sap from the yew tree and she mixed the powder into a paste. And with that paste, she smeared it around the bottom of a giant oak tree. And she took her cloak and she covered the base of the tree and the paste and she waited. She waited till the moon got to its highest point in the sky. And when the moonlight hit the cloak, the magic happened. When the witch removed the cloak, it revealed an egg, a dragon's egg, or what looked like a dragon's egg. You see, this dragon's egg was made of stone. But the witch had a plan. She would ask the raven to carry the dragon's egg up into Solas's nest and leave it there. And when Solas would return from bringing light to the forest, she would find the egg and she would sit on it until it would hatch. But the cunning part of the plan is that this egg would never hatch, for it was made of stone. So the next day, the raven flew up and he dropped the egg in Solas's nest. And when Solas returned, the plan happened perfectly. She saw the egg and there she sat and sat and sat. The witch went out and danced and danced and danced her darkness throughout all of the forest. The darkness became so deep that no light could penetrate. The daytime creatures like the woodpecker and the rabbit, they went off to Solas and they climbed into Solas's nest. They said, Solas, we need you to bring light into the forest, for the darkness is suffocating us. But Solas said, I cannot leave my nest, for here I have my own egg, and I will stay on my nest until it hatches. And the animals went away. But the old cunning raven was watching from a treetop. And even though the raven liked the darkness, and even though the raven was friends with the witch, he knew that a forest filled with only darkness would eventually die. The raven knew that light had to return. So the raven flew down and found the woodpecker and said to woodpecker, the egg that Solas sits on is made of stone. It will never hatch. You must tell her. And with that, the woodpecker flew up to Solas's nest. And the woodpecker perched on the edge of the nest and said, Solas, I bring terrible, terrible news for you. I am sorry to tell you, but the egg that you sit on is made of stone. It will never hatch. With this, Solas rose up from her nest. Her wings spread and fury and anger came in her face. She started to flap her wings with such ferocity that the nest began to break apart and scattered all over the forest. She turned and she flew over the trees and out into the distance. And now she was gone for what seemed forever. The woodpecker returned to the ground and told all the creatures that Solas was gone. They all agreed that somehow they must find her. They had to bring her back, for the forest would die in darkness. So they sent the barn owl to look for Solas, and the barn owl flew round and round. And after days and days of looking, the barn owl returned and said they had found Solas out on the far edge of the forest, and they must find her and bring her back. So the woodpecker and the rabbit decided that they would go and look for Solas, but they couldn't navigate through the forest. They were daytime creatures and their eyes hadn't adapted for this. So they asked the raven for help. They said, "Raven, guide us through the forest." But the raven refused. The raven said, "I have helped more than my share." So they asked the bear. They said, "Bear, will you guide us through the forest?" But the bear refused. He said, "I am too clumsy. I cannot guide you all the way through the forest." And then while they were sat wondering who else they could ask, 4 fireflies came dancing through the forest. Said the rabbit, "Fireflies, will you take us to find Solas? You will brighten the forest and you will lead the way." And the fireflies agreed. They said, "Yes, we will take you, but it is so far that we cannot fly that distance. You have to carry us and we will take you to where she is." But when rabbit and woodpecker took hold of the fireflies, their lights went out. They said, "We must carry them in something." So they gathered 2 bowls that were made of wood and they placed the fireflies in them. But as they set off, the light from the fireflies was dimmed in the bowls. They felt that their quest was over. How could they possibly do it? And as they sat, they noticed that the darkness brought cold and ice started to form on the trees. And then the woodpecker had an idea. "Let us make lanterns of ice, and then we can carry the fireflies inside the lanterns and they will illuminate the whole forest." So they went down to the river and they grabbed some rocks and they began to make ice lanterns around the rocks, and they pulled out the rocks and placed in the fireflies, and off they went. But the heat from the fireflies began to melt the ice, and every time they got to a certain point, the lanterns melted and they were left with just a pool of water. Now again, the raven had been watching this from above, and the raven swooped down and said, "Do you know the legend of the dragon's egg?" And the woodpecker and the rabbit said, "We do not know." And the raven explained that any ice lantern that is made using a dragon's egg will never melt. And the woodpecker said, "But we don't have a dragon's egg. We don't know where to find one." But the raven reminded them of the egg that the witch had made. And they went in search. They all returned to the scene of the nest where Solas had destroyed it. And they began to search. They looked high and low through the branches, under the moss, in amongst twigs. And the small wood mouse called out, for it had found something. It called to the other creatures, gather round, for I have found something." And they gathered round, and they found the dragon's egg that the witch had made, but also a second dragon's egg. They then realised all this time Solas had been sat on an egg of her own, and this egg needed its mother. They realised that they had to get the egg to Solas as quick as they possibly could. So they made 2 ice lanterns, one around each of the eggs, and off they went through the forest. And halfway on their journey, the lantern around the witch's egg melted. But the lantern around the other egg, stayed solid. And they walked and walked, and they were guided by the fireflies. And just as they were coming to the edge of the forest, they heard Solas. And Solas lifted her head and looked in, and there she saw an ice lantern illuminated by fireflies. And she knew herself of the legend of the dragon egg. And in seeing an ice lantern that had been carried so far, she knew that her egg was safe. She came up from her slumber. She swooped down, and with her talons she picked up the egg. And as she flew through the forest, she let out a huge puff of fire, so big that it split the darkness in 2, and the light returned to the forest. And that is why we get beautiful sunrises that look like dragon's fire. But Solas then returned to the nest, and she sat down on the nest with her egg, and she warmed it. And it wasn't long before the egg hatched. And when the egg hatched, the small dragon came out, and they named her Maideen, which in Gaelic means morning. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the story.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed that. I loved sitting back and closing my eyes, actually. I found it easy to be carried along on that story journey. Amazing.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's time. And you'll know, as a first, for the stories that I've written before, they always evolve as you tell them and you tell them. So that story may never be the same again. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that you were able to just carry on after you said leg rather than egg. It was like, it just carried on. That was very professional. Love it.
Leg, egg.
And I loved the prop of that beautiful stone and how it really does look like an egg. Yes. And I find myself drawn to stones when I'm out and about, and I try not to gather too many because I want to leave them out and about, but occasionally I'll find a really special one, and I've got a small collection, and just love to hold them and imagine what they could be, and what could be inside of them. What could they be holding?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Would you like to share with us a little bit, Danny, about how that story came to be? Because it partly came from holding that stone, didn't it? And then
it did. Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody gave me this stone as a gift back in January, and as soon as they gave it to me, straight away I felt that it had a story in it, and it made me think of a dragon's egg. And I've been holding on to it and waiting for the story to come, and this week it came out. But it was also inspired a little bit by, I mentioned that I'd been doing the ice lanterns and working with ice for a Weeby Kids activity, and it was a combination of creating the ice and working with the ice and ending up with something beautiful, which I also felt deserved a story, and the dragon's egg as well. So I think creativity working in loops, in a way, where working with my hands to create a story, yet being given a piece of the earth to help me get my creativity going as well. So that's where it came from, and a little bit of pressure as well, knowing that I was going to tell a story today and wanted to do something new. So that is in its way motivating and inspiring to be connected with all these people who have come to watch, because they were motivating me to do it too. So
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that.
can I just say as well, if you are watching and you want to make an ice lantern, then you can do it over at Weeby Kids with the link is down there. It's a free resource on that fun little activity.
Yeah. I was thinking of an activity that we used to do, which we haven't done for years actually, at home, which is we also have a stone that's shaped a bit like a dragon's egg, and it looks a little bit like a sort of rainbow piece of glass, but very frosted glass. And we used to just randomly hide it about the house, and then we would do a sort of okay, it's time to find the dragon's egg thing, and who could find it first. And I have a hotter colder thing, and that sometimes, well, some of us would just have an intuition of like, oh, I know where it is, and we'd go and find it. We'd be fairly close to it, but that sort of inner vision that you can sometimes develop when you get an attachment to an object, that might be something that people can try at home. Is have a special object of some sort and hide it around the house, and then play hide and seek, hunting for your dragon's egg. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great suggestion. Love that. All right. Are we ready for our next story?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Shall I get on with it then?
All right. Go over to Chris now for story number 2.
Okay. So this story is a story about rainbows and how rainbows came to be. And I heard this story many years ago. In fact, I read it in a book. I can't remember the name of the book, but the story has been with me for years and years. It's one of those ones that just hasn't gone away. And it was one of the first stories that I started telling around campfires before I'd even written my book, which I just want to show off. There you go. I Love My World. But people haven't seen that one before. And it was one of those stories that's carried me along. And the reason I wanted to tell it today was because, having looked on social media a lot recently, like probably quite a few of us, then I've seen quite a lot of rainbows, and people have been putting rainbows in their windows in houses that I've noticed when I've been driving to the shops and back. And so that rainbow is a symbol of something better to come. And what I really like about this particular story is that it gives me a way. Several years ago, I worked with Transition Town Network when they were starting up in Totnes, and I worked with some of the teenagers at the secondary school there to sort of help them create a vision of the future. And so I told this story, and then we thought about what kind of future we would like to create. So I'm going to invite you to do the same thing afterwards. Afterwards, do an activity at home where you can use the inspiration of this story to think about a future you would like to have. So this story is an Achamawi Indian story. So the Achamawi people lived in the sort of southwest of the United States and sort of northern Mexico. And this is one of their traditional stories, as far as I know. So if I retell it in a way that, I don't mean to cause any offense by the way that I'm retelling the story, and I trust that I'm keeping the story alive in a good way. I'm wearing this headdress because, we have a little bit look at it up close here. A friend of mine, who I call Feathers, he made this for me to do storytelling in. So whenever I tell stories that come from North America or South America, actually, I tend to wear this headdress because some of these feathers up the top here are from the Amazon, and then some of the others are from England. But anyway, just helps me carry the story. And I'm going to be playing one of these. There you go. It's a marimba. It's from Africa. It just helps me play the story, or some music for the story. There we go. Let's see if I can get that right. Okay, there we go. One day, in the Achamawi village, it started to rain. And it rained all day. So the children didn't really mind. They went out and splashed in the puddles, and they caught the rain dripping off the eaves of the house. And the grown-ups, well, they didn't really want to go outside too much, so they didn't. And that night, they all went to sleep. Well, the next morning, cock-a-doodle-doo, they all woke up, and guess what? It was still raining. And it went on like this for at least a week. The children were beginning to get a bit hemmed in and a bit bouncing off the walls. And the old people, well, they didn't know what to do. There wasn't much food left either. And so it was only the old people who were getting fed, and the mamas who had babies. Everyone else was just having to go hungry. And each morning, after having been asleep, they woke up and guess what? It was still raining. Well, eventually, one of the old women said, I know a song, an old song, that will help the rain go away. I think it goes like this. Let me find my rattle. And she picked up her rattle and she said, I'll teach it to you. It goes like this. You can sing along if you like. You probably know it. Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. But guess what? It carried on raining. So the old wise woman and the old wise man, they had a bit of a chat and they thought, let's go and ask Coyote. Coyote is a wise dog. He sometimes howls to the old one upstairs. Maybe he can ask the old one upstairs to stop the rain. So they went out in the rain and they went to go and see old Coyote. And Coyote, he said, okay, yeah, sure, I'll help you. I haven't been able to go out hunting for days either. Okay, I'll go to my howling place and I'll howl to the old one upstairs. So he went, and if you want to join in, you can. You can join in with the howl. Oh! But guess what? It carried on raining. So Coyote and the wise old man and the wise old woman, they talked about it and they thought, I know, let's go to the top of the mountain and then we can ask the old one upstairs to stop the rain, because maybe he just can't hear all the way down here through the clouds. If we go up to the top of the mountain, we'll have a better chance. So the wise man and the wise woman, they went back to the village to go and get some people to help them call to the old one upstairs. And Coyote, he decided to go up the path and go and get some other animals. And so off he went. Well, he hadn't gone far when he came to the Mouse Brothers. The Mouse Brothers were all huddled up underneath a leaf at the entrance to their little burrow. What are you doing, Coyote? Oh, I'm going to the top of the mountain, said the dog. He said, I'm going to go and ask the wise man upstairs to, or the old one. We don't know whether it's a man or a woman. The old one upstairs to stop the rain. Do you want to come? Oh yeah, sure, we'll come with you. Can we have a lift? Sure, come on, hop on. And so they climbed on up onto the Coyote's shoulders, and off they went. Well, soon, further up the trail, they came to Weasel Man. He was darting in and out amongst all the rocks, looking for something to eat. And he said, "Hey, Coyote, what are you doing?" Coyote said, "Oh, hey, brother, we're going to the top of the mountain to go and ask the old one upstairs to stop the rain. Do you want to come?" "Yeah, sure I do. I'm so hungry. I haven't been able to find anything to eat for days." Those mice, are they going as well?" "You can come with us," said Coyote, "but you can't eat the mice." "Oh, all right then." So all together, they trotted on up the trail. Well, eventually, they came to Foxwoman's burrow. "Hey, Foxwoman, what you doing in there?" Because all they could see was the tip of her white tail, and coming out of the burrow was loads of sticks and mud and stuff. "Oh, hello," she said. "What are you doing, Coyote?" "Oh, we're going up to the top of the mountain to ask the old one upstairs to stop the rain. Do you want to come?" "Oh, yeah, sure I do. The rain's just been washing all of this dirt into my house. Let's go and ask him." So off they went. Further up the mountain, they came to Rabbit Woman's burrow, and there, Rabbit Woman, she was shivering at the entrance to her burrow, looking out into this nice little fresh bit of green grass. And Coyote said, "Hey, sister, what are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I don't like green, wet grass. I don't like wet grass. Can you do something about it?" "Oh, yeah, of course I can. We're going to up to the top of the mountain to ask the old one upstairs to stop the rain. Do you want to come?" "Oh, yeah, I'll come with you." So they went all together further up the mountain. Well, the trees got shorter and the bushes got spikier and the clouds seemed to get lower until eventually they came to Grandma Spider's house. Grandma Spider lived on a spiky old bush, and Coyote said to Grandma Spider, he said, "Grandma, would you like to come with us? We're going to the top of the mountain to ask the old one upstairs to stop the rain. Do you want to come?" She said, "Oh, no, I'm far too old for that kind of business. But you could ask some of my thousands of children. They live in the bushes below. Ask them. Somebody will go with you." "Oh, okay." So the two spider sisters decided that they would go with the rest of the animals up to the top of the mountain. And there, when they got there, they met the humans. And the humans were there. There were some warriors with their bows and arrows. There were some gathering women who had their digging sticks with them. And all together, they decided that the best thing to do was to sing to the old one upstairs and ask him or her to stop the rain. You can join in if you like. Are you ready? "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day." But guess what? It carried on raining. "Oh man, what should we do?" "Well, I know," said one of the warriors. "What we should do is make a hole in the sky. We have spears and we have arrows. We will make a hole in the clouds, and then we can sing the song, and the song will go up through the clouds to the old one up in the sky." Everyone looked around. It's like nobody had any better ideas. So all the hunters and the warriors, they pulled back their bowstrings and they drew back their spear arms and they aimed at a place in the sky, and then all together with a 1, 2, 3, whoosh, they sent those arrows and spears up into the sky, and the clouds opened. Wow! So everyone tried again. They sang the song again. You ready? "Rain, rain, go away, come again another day." But guess what? It carried on raining. What should we do? What should we do? Well, the Spider Sisters, they said, "We've got an idea. We do something when it's windy. We let little bits of silk come out of our bums. And the wind catches hold of the silk and it whisks us away. We go flying through the air. It's great fun. You could blow us up through the hole in the sky. And then we would go and find the old one upstairs and ask him or her to stop the rain." Great idea. Okay, everybody. So the spiders, they climbed up to the top of the tallest headdress, and then everybody started to blow. And the spiders, on 1, 2, 3, whee! They came back down again. Why don't we all blow together? Good idea. So the spiders climbed up to the top. Everyone took in a deep breath, and they blew. And the spiders, they jumped on that breath and they went way up into the clouds. And above the clouds, they looked out across, and there it was beautiful and white. And there, in the distance, was this huge cloud that looked like an enormous head. So the spiders, they ran across the top of the clouds, and eventually they came to this huge cloud. They climbed up to what looked like an enormous earlobe. And they said, "Hello, is anybody there?" What? Was this rumble of thunder? Who said that? "Oh, it's us. It's the spiders. We've come to ask you to stop the rain. We're on your earlobe." "Oh, I thought I could feel something." and this big hand came out of the clouds, and it came around, and it scooped off the earlobe, and it picked up the little spiders, and it said, "Oh, spiders, how did you get here?" "Oh, old one upstairs, we were blown up by the animals and the people. We all had to get together. We climbed to the top of the mountain because it's been raining up there for weeks." "Hello, Thistle." It's our dog. Yeah, we need you to stop the rain. And so we all worked together, and they blew us up through the hole in the clouds, and then we ran across and we came up to earlobe to ask you to stop the rain. "Wow. Oh, well, I'm so sorry. I must have just fallen asleep. Hang on." And his other hand came up out of the clouds, reached over, and pressed a big button-shaped cloud. The rain began to stop. "Oh, there you go. Sorry, getting a bit old. Forget to do things sometimes." "Yes," thought the little spiders. And then they had this idea, and they said, "Old one upstairs, please, would you be able to send us a sign that it's going to stop raining soon?" "Oh, that's a good idea. How about I send you a fox's tail?" "A fox's tail? What, like a fox's tail?" "Yeah, but a big one, a huge one, going across the sky." "Oh, well, yeah, okay. Well, what's it going to look like?" "You'll have to imagine it," said the old one. So the spiders, they shut their eyes. How many eyes would 2 spiders have to shut? 16, that's right. 16 eyes shut. And the spiders, they imagined this fox jumping from a sandy bank on one side of the river, over a stream, over onto a grassy bank on the other side, and behind was this beautiful sunset. And when they opened their eyes, whoosh, there across the sky was this amazing thing they'd never seen before. "Oh, let's call it a rainbow," said the old one upstairs. "Oh, thank you so much," said the spiders. "We'll go and tell all the other animals what this means. Thank you, old one." And they ran across the sky. And eventually, when they got back to the hole in the sky, in the clouds, which was getting bigger and bigger, and there were more and more of these clouds, they jumped off the clouds. Whee! And eventually, they came down and landed. And they told the animals and the people, they were so happy that the rainbows came to be, to remind them that it's going to stop raining soon. And spiders have never been forgotten for that thing that they did, because if you look into a spider's web on a dewy morning or after it's been raining, and you have a look at each of the little droplets of water in there, you'll see that each one has its own little rainbow. And that is the story of the rainbow makers. Thank you for the person that story came from, and to the storyteller that told them that, and storyteller beyond and beyond. And here's the story for you to tell and share. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Chris.
That's quite all right. Good.
Beautiful.
It was a bit longer than I expected, but there you go.
There are a lot of
You were in the story. I love that. The music was great, and we got to meet your dog.
Oh, you did, yeah. Thistle.
Yeah, I was totally carried away by that story.
Yeah, I loved the sounds of the rain. I loved listening to that. That was great.
Cool.
And you did a great the voice for the way you held the spiders so gently. You were that great being up there. You did a great job at depicting he or she.
I'm working on it.
Look, with your headdress and the deep voice and the spiders, it was awesome.
Oh, cool, thank you. Yeah, some nice comments there too as well. So thanks for those people still listening in. That's great, isn't it?
Yeah. Someone said, "Love the sneaky bit of maths."
Oh yeah, I've got to get that in. Yeah. Yeah, because you can think about how many legs of the different creatures there are and different characters getting to the top of the mountain, and I don't know how many decibels of sound they need to be able to get the sound up through the clouds, or how what trajectory the arrows would need to go at, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, go and learn about rockets and what they need to learn about to be able to get up into the upper atmosphere and stuff. Yeah, loads of ways you can go forwards on this one.
I was thinking too about the spiders and how they got up to the clouds, and the blowing, and how it needed more than one or a coordinated effort of multiple people blowing at the same time, and the amount of force that needed to take, and thinking about, what's in our own house that we could try to see if we could blow and keep afloat, or get to a certain point, high up on a shelf, if you can get something from one part of a shelf to another or something like that. It's a pretty cool experiment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I love any story that kind of gives a spider a gentleness or a level of understanding, because they're feared by so many people unfairly. And I think, we all know that the stories that we tell, they're probably feared because of some stories in the past which gave them that label. So I think as new stories emerge, anything that we can do to help give them a new level of understanding is great. So I love that they seem gentle and adventurous as they flew up through the clouds. And it's lovely. We've done a little thing in the past where we've made, I nearly lost you again. I did that a few times in my story. My thing gets caught around my watch. Where we make little frames with square lash corners, and then use wool or string just to then make spiders' webs within side of the picture frame, which would be a little activity to do after that story.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Anything else? Are we ready for the third story?
Yeah, I'd like to move on to you so you can have a chance to tell your story. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to type some responses to some of these comments and stuff whilst you're doing that too.
Great.
Awesome.
Good luck, Caylin.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, so thanks everybody for sticking around, staying for story number 3. So just to give a little intro to this story. So this is, I have lived in lots of different places in my life, and I moved to Ottawa, Canada last June, which is the traditional lands of the Algonquin people. And so I'm experiencing my first spring here, and it's different from any other spring that I've experienced. And I'm learning about new animals and new weather patterns that happen at this time of year. And we are starting to get the rain. We've had lots of snow through the winter, and then now it's melted, the ice is melted, and we've got rain coming. And in addition to that, we're getting the return of migrating birds. And where I live, I'm not too far from a lake. And so we're getting the Canada geese. So this is actually a painting that I painted of a Canada goose. And they fly over my house and to the lake every single evening. They rest there for the evening, and then they emerge in the morning, wake up, and they fly off for the day to go feed in the farmers' fields around the area. And they make a huge commotion, when the geese are coming and going. So they've been a real big part of my daily life for quite some time now. And so I wanted to write a story that had to do with the geese and with the springtime. So that's a little intro to this story. And as I said, the first time I really told it. So hopefully, hopefully this will go well. So the way the story goes is a long, long, long time ago, there was a very, very special lake. And it was in the far north where it never rained. There was never any rain, and there was always, always bright sunshine. But it would get very cold in the wintertime, and the lake would freeze over. And so nothing could really live on the lake, and it would go very, very silent. Wouldn't be any animals around, and it would just be covered in ice. But later into the spring, when the sun would get a little warmer, the ice would start to melt. And that warming up of the ground and the land would signal to animals that were staying further south for the winter that it was time for them to move and return to this lake. And one of the many animals that would return would be the Canada geese. And they're big geese with big, big flapping wings that can take them really far for miles and miles and miles. So they would make their way over the land, flying, 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 all together as a group in a V, often in the shape of a V, so that they could help each other and guide each other along until they would see the lake. But the only way that they could know they could land in the lake and take a rest from all of that flying was when they could see their reflections in the water below that would glisten from the sun that was shining down onto the lake. So as they would fly over the land, as soon as they could see their reflections of their brown and black and gray feathers that would shimmer on the surface of the lake in bronze and gold and silver colors, they knew they could come in and land for a rest, and that's what they would do. So they would land for the evenings, rest in the lake, take a break, and then in the mornings, they would swoop off again as a group to go find some food before returning again in the evenings. And this was their daily life. But there were other birds that would return to the area as well. And there was one particular bird called the grackle. And the grackle was a smaller bird, about the size of a magpie or a small crow. And it was a very dull color, just a very dull gray. It didn't have the browns or the bronzes or the other colors of the birds in the area. And it was a bit jealous. And it desperately wanted something that would make it stand out. And it would perch on the branch of a sumac tree that was next to the edge of the lake. And it would watch as the geese would fly back every evening to rest. And it would see the glistening of their reflections on the water of the lake. And it thought, those reflections of the gold and the silver and the bronze, that is beautiful. I want that for me. And so one evening, as the geese had tucked themselves in for the night and were resting, the grackle swooped over the lake, and one by one, it picked up the reflections of each goose out of the water. And each one, it would tuck into a feather behind its neck and on its head. And so by the end of the evening, it had gone and collected every single reflection of all the geese in the lake. And it had created this bronze and gold and shimmering silver headdress for itself. Its head and its shoulders, glistening color. And it thought, oh, look at me now. I am gorgeous. And the most beautiful bird there is. And it flew up to the top of the sumac tree and proudly sat there, showing off its new look. When the geese woke up in the morning, they didn't realize what had happened. The grackle had been so quiet that they had no idea. And so they thought it was just their usual morning. And so they all took off together, swoop, 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 up off the lake, went off to a field to go get some food, spent the day there. And then when they returned in the evening, they flew back towards the lake. But as they flew over, they started to look down and search and search and search. And they couldn't see their reflections. The reflections were gone. They knew that the lake should be there, but they weren't sure where to land without knowing and being able to see their reflections. So they just carried on thinking, we must be in the wrong place. We must have gone the wrong way. So they kept flapping and flapping and flapping and flying over the land, searching and searching. They couldn't find a lake. They couldn't find their reflections. They started to get really worried because they were getting tired. Their wings were strong, but flying for that long was really tough. They decided they needed to get some help. So they flew up to the sky and they asked the sky for help. They said, "Sky, we usually can see our reflections and know where the special lake is where we can land and rest for the evenings, but our reflections are gone or we can't find the lake. Is there anything you can do to help us?" And the sky had sort of seen what had happened with the grackle and said, "I'll do what I can. I'll see if I can help. I know someone who might have stolen the reflections from the lake, and I'll have to get some friends together to see if we can get them back. Give me a few moments, just have some patience, stay strong and flap, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." And so Sky then beckoned other sky friends, all the other birds, to come up to the sky so that they could have a discussion to figure out, how are we going to help the geese? So they all started to think, what can we do? The grackle is so proud of its new shimmering colors. How are we going to get the grackle to let that go? I don't think the grackle will want to not have that anymore. So there was one bird who said, I have an idea. The grackle wants to be special. It wants to have the special colors. I am a blue jay, and I have beautiful blue colors, all the different shades of blue, and I'm like the colors of the water. I think that the grackle might want to take a few of my feathers instead and give back the reflections. I'll go and speak to the grackle and see what I can do. So the blue jay swooped down from the sky to the sumac tree and landed on the branch next to the grackle and said, "Hi, grackle. My name's Blue Jay, and I can see that you have some beautiful colors on your head and your shoulders now. That looks good, but to be honest, I think you'd look much better in blue. Have you seen my colors and my feathers? They're all the different shades of blue, and they reflect all the different colors like water. Wouldn't you like to take a few of my feathers and get rid of those the reflections of the geese that you took?" The grackle looked at the blue jay and said, "Those are nice blue colors, but they don't shimmer. They don't glisten like my colors do now from the sunlight. So thanks for the offer, but no thank you." So the blue jay was defeated. It didn't work, and so flew back up to the sky and to all the other feathered friends and explained what had happened and said the grackle won't give it back. The blue isn't good enough for what the grackle wants. So the birds all started to think and brainstorm, what can they do? What can they do in order to get grackle to release the reflections? Meanwhile, the geese were still flying around, hovering over the land. They were breathing hard because they were getting so tired. And the bird said, "We have to do something now." So another little bird said, "I think I can help." That bird was the cardinal. And the cardinal was a bright red color, the brightest bird in all of the land. And it said, "I know that the blue jay has nice blue colors, and maybe the grackle didn't want that. I am a bright red, though. Red like fire, like the sun. I think that the grackle will want my feathers instead." So the cardinal flew down to the sumac tree, landed on the branch next to the grackle and said, "Hi, grackle. I know that you talked to blue jay. I understand why you didn't want those blue feathers. They're pretty, but they're nothing like my red feathers. My red feathers are so bright that anyone can see. They flash across the land, and they're bright like fire in the sun. Wouldn't you like to take some of my feathers instead? And you can just get rid of those reflections from the geese." And the grackle said, "You're right. They are really bright. Everyone would be able to see me no matter where I was. But they don't shimmer. They don't glisten in the sunlight. They're not as beautiful as the colors that I have now with the gold and the silver and the bronze. So no, thank you. That's all right. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to stick with what I have." So the cardinal was defeated, flew back to the sky and told everybody what had happened. And they really thought, well, what are we to do now? I mean, those were the two brightest colors, or birds with the brightest feathers in all of this land. And if they can't convince the grackle to take some of their feathers instead, none of us can. So we need to come up with something else in order to help the geese. Meanwhile, the geese were huffing and puffing, saying, "Please do something soon. We need to land. We're getting tired." So the birds all started to talk to the sky, and they hatched a plan that they thought this could work. So the birds started to swoop down to the lake and pick up a droplet of water from the lake and return back up to the sky. They could only pick up one droplet at a time. Meanwhile, the sky created clouds in order to hold the droplets as the birds, one by one, would place a drop of water into the clouds, swoop down again, collect another droplet, and come back up until eventually they had a whole collection of water droplets being held gently by the clouds that the sky had created. And when they had enough, they called over the sun and said, "Sun, can you please help us? Can you release some of your light and your glimmer into these droplets so they can reflect them and shimmer just like the grackle wanted from the reflections of the geese?" So the sun came over and gave some of its light to these droplets in the clouds. And then when they had filled up with light, the sky opened up the clouds and allowed these droplets to fall to the ground. And as they started to fall to the ground, the glimmering of the light started to shine out of them. And the grackle sitting up in its sumac tree was looking down saying, "What is this? I've never seen this before in my life. What are these? Look how shimmery they are. I can see shimmering of purples and blues and greens and all of these amazing colors. this is beautiful and so much better than what I have. So it started to pick out the reflections it had taken from the geese one by one and throw them back into the lake. And then once it got rid of those, it started to scramble around, picking up these droplets of beautiful iridescent light and tucked them in its feathers instead. And eventually its head was covered and its shoulders with this beautiful shimmering greens and blues and purples. And it was very proud of itself and perched itself at the top of the sumac tree and said, "This is the look that I want to have. This is definitely the most beautiful of all of the birds now." And with the reflections returned to the lake, the geese could see where they needed to land. And with huge relief, they all let out really loud honks in celebration and gratitude of finally being able to land. So there was a big commotion of honk, 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 as all the geese landed on the lake and could take a breath and rest. And so from now on, whenever the geese leave the lake to go out for the day and return, they always honk as loud as they can in gratitude that they will have their reflections to know that they can return at the end of the day to rest. And that is the story of the grackle and the geese.
Love it. Yeah. I had to have a sneaky Google online there to go and find out what a grackle was whilst you're telling the story. And yeah, what a beautiful bird and what a great story to go with it. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a totally new bird to me, and I noticed it the other day and thought, what is that? And had to look it up. And you should also look up the noise that it makes.
Okay.
It's quite a unique noise. It's kind of, I'll do a little mini impression. I was trying to practice before this to make it part of the story, and I couldn't perfect it enough. Maybe another time I tell it, but it's got this like kind of noise that it makes. Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like a magpie in this country, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it
so
reminds
nice.
me a lot of a magpie.
Kevin, I love how you said that you only discovered that bird a week ago, did you say? Or 2 weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago.
Because I often find that, and I think it's the same when children listen to stories as well, where if I like discover something new and add it into my story, within a week you can feel so connected to it and you can understand so much more about it because it has been becomes a part of your story. Whereas, you know, if you just see it and you let it go by and then you see it again in 3 weeks, it takes a long time to connect with things. But by weaving it into your story and your words, it builds a really strong connection. I think when children hear that in the stories as well, they connect in a deeper way with it. So and even that thing where I loved the bit about the bird picking off the reflections. It's just such a beautiful vision. It's such like in terms of writing a story, it's such a beautiful thing to come up with. Yeah. Have you been watching the reflections of the birds as they landed? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time at the lake and just experiencing the geese flying in and out, and the reflections from the sun, and just the imagery. I thought I've got to do something with this. And then, as someone pointed out too, I have heard before my last name is Gans, and I have heard that in, you know, I guess they've said in what language was it, is goose.
Dutch. Yeah.
Yeah, in Dutch. I've also heard in potentially Yiddish is something someone else has told me too. I'm not sure, but so that connection to the goose has been lifelong. Actually, my mother calls herself Mother Goose, Mother Gans.
Cool. Yeah.
Deeper meaning.
Yeah.
I love the idea of connecting with nature and going out there and noticing the reflection, which takes a certain amount of mindfulness to be able to recognize a reflection, but then not only noticing it, but then really interacting with it, pulling meaning from it, and then adding it into your story. For me, that's like a perfect nature connection, like little activity there to notice, to interact with it, and then to make it a part of the view. So really fascinating. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, I'm glad.
Definitely. And I love the way that you're so lit up when you tell stories, you know, from the inside, you know. It's great. So in terms of, you know, being nervous about telling the story and things, it comes through as yeah, I don't know. I can't think of a word at the moment, but sort of brightness from the inside. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, I think that's for anybody here who is here not just for listening to stories, but maybe to get a bit of confidence to start telling your own stories. I know for me, particularly going after you, Chris, and you, Danny, who are such experienced storytellers, there is an intimidation there of like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be as good as them. But I think what you were getting at, Chris, and what I was focusing on is having the story come from within you and just letting it come out. And that's something that I've been trying to connect with of, instead of trying to remember all the details and I got to remember this and I've got to think of that, just more of like being in the story yourself and then letting it come out in words and actions and maybe props to who you're sharing it with, but having it come through you is something that I'm learning how to do.
You know, I have a little thing that I always remind myself and try and remind other storytellers as well, is that especially with nature stories, where just imagine that Mother Nature doesn't have a voice, that she does all these beautiful things, visual things, but she doesn't have a voice to get her story out. And it's through storytellers that she speaks. So, you know, if you ever feel nervous about telling a story, there's a greater something, energy that is telling the story. It's their voice, which you are the vessel for, in a way. I love that. It always inspires me. Sometimes if I get nervous about storytelling, I'm like, I'm just the vessel for nature to put this story into words so people can understand it.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Definitely, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking of games of what you could do from that story, and a game that sometimes I play with my kids has been, you know, jumping on each other's shadows on sunny days when you're outside in the park and just trying to jump. And yeah, it's just silly but active. That's quite fun. And
my daughter loves that.
Does she?
Shadow tag. She just loves it. She would play it for days and days. Sometimes I'm glad when the sun goes in because I'm exhausted.
Yeah. And another thing was finding all the bits of tin foil and the old packets that we're sort of used to recycling, and just having a go at making little feathers out of each of those little, cutting them into feathers and making bird heads or whatever, or maybe just shadows and reflections of birds that you might see. There's another idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, any other final thoughts? We've taken up our hour. It's been wonderful, everyone, to have you join us for that. That was really fun. We did discuss that we're going to try to continue to do this weekly for now. So put it in your calendars and diaries, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. British Standard Time for next Wednesday. We'll try to do it again, 3 new stories. Anything else to say, Chris or Danny, before we sign off?
Just to say thank you, everyone, for stopping by and listening and sharing your comments and giving us a platform to tell our stories as well. So yeah,
definitely. I'd love to hear from what people get up to, and if they have any bright ideas or stuff that happens off the back of the story. I know last week I got somebody sent an email with a little picture of the little pretend fire that they had made in their sitting room with some lovely cloths and logs and a candle, and I think that was another picture. But yeah, just things that people have been doing. It's quite nice to see what's on the other side of the lens from our point of view. That's it for me.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Again, thanks everyone for joining, and feel free to get in touch with us too. We've put up our contact like websites and things like that, and I'll also leave it. This will be posted as a recording to YouTube, and then in the description, I'll have links to be able to touch base with us. So if you want to continue to comment on the video or get in touch with us directly, feel free to reach out, and hopefully we'll see you all again next week.
Yay!
Indeed. Take care.
Bye.